This is lesson number 6 of 7 of the JSCause tutorial from JSCause.org by 8th Jouster. In this lesson, we'll read content from the file system and display it on the home page. In our case, our content is the stored food recipes. Let's remember that our recipes are stored as individual files inside the recipes directory and as images in the recipe images directory. We'll retrieve the names from recipe images and list them in the home page. We'll do this first, then we'll render the page after all the asynchronous operations complete. You already know how we do this with rt.runAfter. So let's add it at the beginning and enclose the whole HTML in this runAfter function. We'll use both the fs and path node modules in order to retrieve the contents of our recipe images directory. Let's remember that this directory is under website. We'll use non-native JSCause functions such as fs.readThere as in read directory. Because they're non-native, any path used by them must start from the directory JSCause is running from. So let's do that right here. That means that instead of using website recipe images, we have to use sites, my site, website, recipe images. Remember, this is just because we're using native Node.js file operation functions. This will change at some point when we introduce native ways to read directories and paths. And by native, I mean the JSCause way. Let's also declare an array which we'll use to store all the recipes. Okay, so let's read the directory. We have our image path, so we'll use readThere, which uses a callback, and within the callback, we'll process each and every file inside the images directory. Remember that we must use rt.waitFor so that JSCause waits for the callback to be completed before sending a response back to the browser. For each file, let's extract the file name and extension. We can do this with the following regular expression, which means match anything before and after a dot, before and after the dot, and remember those matches. And those remembered matches will be stored in these two variables, file name with no extension and file extension. Now that we have the name, let's slap the txt file extension right here. Let's create a path to the recipes file and read it. If we get an error, let's just emit a warning. There you go. A more complex application may handle this differently. Perhaps it may retry the operation or something. But let's keep things simple. By the way, I just noticed that we added a wait for here, but we didn't close the parentheses. So let's do that right now. There you go. Anyways, if we succeed in reading the file, let's get the text content and get the very first line in it. If you recall, when we created the recipe, the title is the very first line in the file. Right here, tomato soup. Let's rename this variable to contents buffer. And we're going to use it in order to extract the contents of the file. We put this data in a list and we are ready to display it. Displaying a recipe will be managed in another JSCP script, which doesn't exist yet, but let's call it viewRecipe, viewRecipe.jscp. And for every entry in the list, we generate some HTML referring to this file to view the new recipe. Notice how we provide the name as a parameter. It will be used by our future viewRecipe.jscp program to find both the text and the image of the recipe to be viewed. And since the images may have different image extensions like JPG or PNG, we should specify that too. Extension equals recipe.extension. Let's restart JSCause and refresh the browser. And there we have it, the list. However, when we click on any link, or in this case just this one link, we don't get a recipe. We'll display the recipe in our next lesson.